Welcome back, everybody. We are in week 7 of Action Research. We've made it to the final week, so this week we're going to be hunkering down and wrapping up our projects and the research process and finishing the class. So congratulations on making it to the last week, and let's finish strong. This week the screencast will be pretty short. I've just got some nuts and bolts things to share with you and just a few things to think about for extension as we draw to the end of the class. In Moodle, you'll see that some of the pieces that are assigned this week, just for review, asking you to take a look at Chapter 7 and Chapter 9, and really what that's talking about is future action planning. You know, what steps are you going to take now that you've completed your research, and take some time to have some deep reflection on what you've accomplished and how the work that you have engaged in improving your own practice and the practices that you engage learners in, how that improvement process has really benefited you as an educator as well as your students. So I encourage you to read those two chapters, but also draw that into what you write about in the final sections in the project, where you have an opportunity to think about the impact that you've made, the impact that you made for the profession, and future directions that you want to go in your classroom with either the research that you've developed, the interventions you've implemented, or maybe even future ideas that you have for directions that you want to try. I encourage you to review the assignment guide, and that is aligned with the project rubric. So you will see the document similar to this one that will be posted up. I shared it in session 6, but it is still relevant information that walks you through the piece of adding in your abstract, and then also dissemination of future results in your future directions. So I've just basically aligned this and taken more of a narrative approach to the components that are in your final project rubric for the assessment of the project. So that's available for your resource in Moodle. This week you're going to mark completion on Chapter 7 and 9 for your participation in the course for the week, but also upload your completed project to Moodle, and then it needs to be turned into your TaskStream account, and I will assess and then upload the document so you have it in both places with the comments for that final piece. You're also going to have a presentation that we're going to talk about in just a minute, and that's just basically giving a quick summary, a very brief summary of what you accomplished in the project so that others in the class can see, and that's going to be turned in via a discussion forum, much like we did the abstracts earlier in the class. I think that was week 2. So just a couple of nuts and bolts for the discussion and analysis of results. You're going to get into, in the discussion of results section, remember the analysis, the data analysis that you developed for week 6 or you're possibly still working on to complete, that was just the facts. You were just going over the factual information you collected. You weren't really supposed to draw any interpretations. The discussion section is where you're going to be able to really talk about the implications for your teaching and potentially others. So this is where you get to expand and really have more dialogue about what you saw in the data, what excited you, what did you learn from the data, what could others learn from the data, why is it important. Keep in mind any conclusions that you make have to correlate to the data that you're reporting. So don't go out on a limb and start talking about something that you can't back up with the data that you've just discussed in the data analysis section. Tie in your research references. So that was from your research-based support for change, one of the earlier sections of the project that we drafted. So this section you want to talk about what you accomplished with the data, what the data show, but draw that support back. Tie back to the research base from the field that you used to help establish why you were going to approach the intervention that you had selected. And then cite it. You need to have at least one citation. More is fine, but at least to just have one in that section to meet the criteria on the rubric. What future implications do your data have for your instruction? So are you planning on continuing the work? Are you going to continue to watch the data? How will this change your practice? Ultimately, that's what we're looking for. And then if you've had any struggles, Like I know in my district, depending on the time of year, right now we're dealing with flu, we're dealing with absences. That may be a struggle. It may have impacted your ability to collect data, particularly if you were working on an intervention that only impacted one or two selected students in your classroom and there was absence. Maybe timeline. Maybe you were dealing with parent-teacher conferences during your research. There could be a number of different struggles, but take this opportunity to talk about that in an honest way with the reader. Let them know what you ran up against. The dissemination of results section is your final section for the project, and that is just asking you to provide 2 clear examples for how you're going to share this work with others. It can be in a faculty meeting. Maybe you're going to present to your peers. Maybe you're going to talk about it in a PLC meeting with just your grade level. Maybe you're going to talk about it in a district professional learning opportunity. Maybe you're going to present at a state conference, and you certainly are going to share this information with others in the class, so that can be one of your 2 strategies. And then you also need to talk about the future directions you're going to attempt to take. Are you going to continue to do research? Are you going to continue to look for different ways to address challenges that you see in your classrooms? Just talk about what that future direction might look like for each of you. Last but not least, back at the very start of the project, I'm going to ask you to develop your abstract. Keep it clear and concise. We had the abstract assignment before we even began the project, and those were spot on. Everyone kept it to a page. Really, you're shooting for 150 to 250 words. It's a very brief discussion. So talk about what you did, how you did it, and what you learned. What did your research show? And you're going to place that following the title page of your document. So that basically will become your page 2. It's going to have a page break after it, and then your project introduction will start on page 3. Just as another reminder, we've seen this in other weeks, but I include it here so you have a reference. You don't have to click back to find it. You're using your APA style. You're including the title page, which should have your name, my name, the course, EDU 5120, Action Research, the date, all should be first page and centered on that title page. Double space your document, 1-inch margins, 12-point font, numbered pages in your upper right header. I think everybody's got that at this point. And then you should also have a running head with a brief title of your project. The brief title is not Action Research. A couple of you still have running head : Action Research. You need to be a little bit more descriptive. And then a minimum of 7 sources in that research-based support for change section of the project. So some of you are still working to finish up that research in the earlier section of the project. Your references page should follow your dissemination and future directions, the last section, and that again is a page break, and references start on a clean page. And then following the references is where you put any appendices. So any extra pieces that you need to provide the reader that are too large to include in the text where you're discussing them. They need to be labeled in the appendices. If you have any questions about that, email, call, and I can jump in a Zoom session with you if you want and do a share screen so that we can look at the same thing and talk it through together. Last, let's talk about the project presentation. I do not care what tool you use, and I provided some fun different ones to try. I found a compilation of different online tools a few years ago. If you want to stick with PowerPoint because you know that, that's fine. If you want to take the opportunity to play with Prezi because maybe you've never had an opportunity to try it, that's an online tool that you can use. If you want to do slides in Google Drive, that would be great too. If you do an online tool, just copy and paste the link into the forum where you're going to present your project. I have yet to have a student actually screencast like I'm doing now. I use a tool called Screencast-O-Matic, but there are certainly other ways that you can do video capture and talk through your projects. So if you want to do that, there's lots of different options for you. I just ask that you share the project in the discussion forum so that we can see each other's work and what we accomplished. So submit the link or upload the presentation to the project forum in Moodle. If you are using a tool like Prezi or Google Slides, just make sure your sharing permissions are on so that we can actually access the link. If I can access it, then I will email you, but that slows me down on getting your final grades turned in. So help me out there, please. Follow the abstract format outlining your study, and what I mean by that is the presentation should include the 3 main components of your abstract that I just went over in the previous slide or the earlier slide. Tell us what the purpose and problem of your project was, and what did you do, how did you do it, and what were the results. Those are the key pieces of the brief presentation that I would like for you to do. Any conclusions, future directions, dissemination plan would be great. And then it was helpful if you can include any of the data illustrations. So if you've done charts or graphs and included those in your project, you already have them done. You can screen clip them and put them into the presentation or draw them in there as an image. They're already done. Why not use them and then help us see what you accomplished in a graphical way? All right. Hopefully there aren't any questions, but again, if you do have questions, please don't be shy. Reach out. I am here as a resource for you, and I really appreciate the opportunity I have when I get to interact in either a Zoom. We've done Zoom this semester, we've done phone calls, we've done chat. I've had more opportunities to connect with people than probably any other semester, and I think that's a credit to you as a cohort because you are taking the initiative and really owning your learning experience, and I appreciate that. It's a lot of fun for me as well when I get to interact with you on a one-to-one basis in a different medium. So we are at the conclusion of the information for the slides, and I want to leave you with just a few final thoughts about empowerment. What you are doing in bettering yourself about completing a master's degree program, I commend you for. And I really am appreciative because I know ultimately there are children that are going to be better for the work that you are putting in right now. And I know it takes a lot of work. I know some of you are coaching. You're taking on new positions. You're taking on new coaching positions because somebody saw something in you and they said, hey, will you do it? And I know that some are stretched pretty thin, but you still are there and you're doing your best for kids. And that's noble. And it's appreciated, and we need more people with that passion and dedication in our profession, and we need to continue to promote that to the younger ones coming up so that we do have great resources continually in our classrooms for those that follow in later generations. So one of the things that I value, again, is that effort and that initiative and that continued development that I think makes us great in terms of our work with kids. And so one of my favorite quotes I like to end with, and it's Aristotle, and it's very simple, that we are repeatedly what we do, therefore excellence is not an act, but it is a habit. So I value the excellence that you are pursuing in bettering yourself and continuing to grow and ultimately bettering the situation for your learners. And I just encourage you to keep at that mindset as you continue in the profession, and that if you do, my belief is you will continue to feel that reward in knowing that you're doing your best for kids. I just came back from a professional learning opportunity myself, and I want to share a couple of things that I thought were valued because as I was listening, I thought this ties directly to the work that we're doing in Action Research. So one of the things I want to share came from a presentation on Future Ready Schools and basically looking at how we continue to work to transform the learning environment for learners so that they are ready for the future and we are preparing them for roles and jobs and future possibilities that don't even exist at this point in time. So a couple of things that I want to share with you in this. There's an annual poll or research that's been going on over the last few years that the Gallup Foundation has put together, and it's called Engage Today and Ready for Tomorrow. So I've just snapshotted a couple of key pieces, and you can find the information for this online, and schools can participate, but basically they've got a data set now of over 900,000 students in grades 5 through 12, representing 3,000 schools and 540 school districts across the country. So the data that I'm sharing here is from the fall of 2016. But what I think is important, and I'm not going to read everything on here, I'll leave it on there and I'll post it in Moodle for you to have access. But there were 4 key areas of the research that, based on student surveys, students responded. And the data was aggregated in the following ways. They looked at their optimism. They looked at their engagement. First, it was engagement with school. They looked at their optimism or hope for the future. And they looked at their level of awareness or understanding of entrepreneurship and financial awareness. We all know that financial literacy has been a big topic, especially in Kansas. And I know many schools are adding it into their high school curriculum and even younger My own district has it as a graduation requirement now. But one of the things that I find fascinating and almost scary, it's scary, it's frightening, but the research is showing in terms of level of engagement, nearly half of public school students are engaged. 49% of students report the level of engagement. So that frightens me. The data goes on to talk about the level of engagement drastically decreasing as students move into the middle school and high school. Now, I don't know about you, but 50% of my students in my classroom being engaged or highly engaged and motivated to learn is a problem. So my question and challenge to you is, what are we going to do about that? How do we continue to provide relevant learning opportunities for our students so that they can perform well academically, so that we see lower levels of absenteeism, and how we see optimism about future choices and their possibility of being productive and finding jobs and careers and attending college if that's their path that will give them value to their life when they leave us. So the student poll also found a number of more insights, and I just share this because I found it interesting, and I think you will too. But it goes on to really talk about how most students maintain friendships with a peer, but many students do not have a chance to be involved with what they see as their greatest strength. You think about the generation, some are coining it Generation A, that we're teaching right now. And what this poll is telling, the research is telling us, is the greatest motivation for students to do well in high school is being able to do what they believe is their greatest strength. So I think in my own mind, when I see this, I think the question is, how do we continue to develop personalized opportunities for students to maximize their strength and apply that in the learning setting? Several of you are doing projects around project-based learning and how to give students more choice and more voice in their learning environment and the learning path and the products that they produce. And I think that is the direction that more of us need to consider, because I really think that the research that's starting to come out and being reported is daunting. It's a wake up. So what does transforming learning look like? And I think some key things to think about and reflect on is, what evidence are we collecting as educators that show we are making a difference? And action research has prompted us to look at what are the things that we knew that were kind of the pieces that were challenges and struggles we wanted to better. But my challenge to you is to keep thinking about what is the evidence that we collect. It doesn't have to be formal action research projects over 7 weeks where we're writing a formal research paper that's 20 pages or more. But challenge yourself to find those answers. What evidence are we collecting that shows we make a difference for learners? And if a student's not progressing, then what? Many of you engaged in the then what for this project. And who's responsible for changing our system to increase the learner engagement, the hope, and to build their toolbox for the future? That one I'm going to give you the answer to. It's each one of us. If not you, then who will? So I hope that what you do next as you finish this class is that you remember the value that you bring to the profession, the value that you bring to every one of the children that you serve, and that you also have a sphere of influence as an educator on decisions that are made within your classroom, in the network of your school, and that my hope is that you continue to do the work and ask the questions and to share out and reach out into that sphere of influence that you hold with your colleagues and with your administrators, and to make sure that our students do have hope and that they do see promise in their future and that they do have a path for higher levels of engagement than 50% in our classrooms every day. So with that, I just want to say thank you so much for the fantastic work that you have put together. And again, be excellent. Continue that path towards excellence. You guys have been fantastic. I wish you the best. Can't wait to read the final projects. Good luck this week and in the future. If I can ever serve as a resource, please don't be bashful and reach out. Thanks and have a great week.